Let's talk about something as American as apple pie: guns. Firearms have been woven into the fabric of American identity for centuries, sparking passionate debates about rights, safety, and freedom. But today we're zeroing in on a specific kind of firearm that's become a lightning rod in our national conversation. We're talking about military-style rifles, often called assault weapons. These are the guns you see in headlines and heated arguments, the ones at the center of some of the country's most tragic mass shootings, and the focus of fierce legal and political battles. Assault weapons have been linked to some of the deadliest incidents in recent memory, fueling calls for reform and igniting public outcry. For many, these rifles symbolize a threat to public safety, while for others, they represent a fundamental right. The debate is back in the spotlight because the legal landscape is shifting fast. New court rulings and legislative efforts are changing the rules almost by the month, making it hard for anyone to keep up. States are fighting over how far they can go to regulate these weapons, and it's all heading toward the Supreme Court. Lawmakers are passing new bans while others are rolling back restrictions, creating a patchwork of laws across the country. On one side, people see these rifles as uniquely dangerous and want them banned to save lives. They point to statistics showing the devastating impact of mass shootings and argue that restricting access could prevent future tragedies. On the other, gun rights advocates argue these are just popular modern rifles protected by the Second Amendment. They say bans unfairly target law-abiding citizens and do little to address the root causes of violence. Legal experts are weighing in too, debating what the Constitution really says about these weapons. Some argue that the founders never imagined firearms like these, while others insist the right to bear arms is absolute, regardless of technology. After a major Supreme Court decision, lawsuits are flying, and lower courts are reaching wildly different conclusions. Some judges uphold bans, while others strike them down, adding to the confusion. This legal chaos means a law can be valid in one state and unconstitutional in another. The result? Americans face a confusing patchwork of rules depending on where they live. Now all eyes are on the Supreme Court for a final answer that could reshape the gun debate for generations. The stakes couldn't be higher, as the court's decision will set a precedent for the entire nation. The tension is real, and the next move from the justices could change everything. Whether you're a gun owner, an advocate for reform, or just someone concerned about safety, what happens next will affect us all. With all the legal drama swirling around gun laws in America, you might expect the Supreme Court to finally step in and deliver a landmark decision this year. One that could settle the fierce national debate over assault weapon bans once and for all. But in a move that surprised many, that's not what happened. Instead of a headline-grabbing ruling, the court chose to stay silent, leaving everyone guessing about the future of gun rights and regulations. Rather than taking up the high-profile cases challenging assault weapon bans in Maryland and Rhode Island, the justices simply declined to hear them. This decision, or more accurately, non-decision, meant that the lower court rulings upholding those bans would stand, at least for now. By refusing to intervene, the Supreme Court left the legal status quo untouched. For residents of Maryland and Rhode Island, nothing changed overnight. The bans remain in effect, and the legal landscape stays as murky as ever. Gun control advocates celebrated the news, relieved that their hard-fought victories in the lower courts would not be overturned. On the other side, gun rights supporters were left frustrated and disappointed, feeling that their chance for a sweeping win had slipped away. It's important to note that this wasn't a ruling on the merits of the cases. The Supreme Court didn't weigh in on whether these bans are constitutional or not. They simply chose not to get involved, at least, not yet. Only 3 of the court's conservative justices wanted to take up the cases. But Supreme Court rules require at least 4 justices to agree before a case is heard, so the effort fell short. The majority of the justices decided it wasn't the right time to address the issue. Some legal experts believe they're waiting for more lower courts to weigh in, hoping for a clearer consensus or a more compelling case to emerge. For now, the Supreme Court's inaction keeps the issue alive and the legal battles raging in courts across the country. Both sides are gearing up for more lawsuits, and the debate over gun laws remains as heated as ever. The so-called hot potato of gun rights has been tossed back to the lower courts, and the next round of legal challenges is already underway, with new cases being filed and old ones making their way up the judicial ladder. The big question now is, when will the Supreme Court finally step in and provide the clarity that so many Americans are waiting for. Until then, the uncertainty continues. In this legal drama, the main players aren't the federal government, they're powerful gun rights organizations. Groups like the Second Amendment Foundation and Firearms Policy Coalition are leading the charge, filing lawsuits nationwide. Their mission: get the Supreme Court to declare bans on popular rifles like the AR-15 unconstitutional. They argue these rifles are in common use for lawful purposes, so banning them violates the Second Amendment. On the other side, state governments defend these bans, calling the weapons uniquely dangerous and arguing for public safety. States say the Second Amendment has always allowed for some regulation, especially for dangerous weapons. This is a classic legal showdown: private groups versus state governments, not federal overreach. The DOJ sometimes weighs in, but it's not driving these cases. It's a grassroots, well-funded legal movement, determined to push this issue to the top. To truly grasp the intensity of the current legal battle over assault weapons bans, we need to examine two pivotal cases that have captured national attention, one in Cook County, Illinois, and the other in Maryland. These cases are at the heart of a debate that could reshape gun laws across the country. In Cook County, the Blair Holt assault weapons ban was enacted to address rising concerns about gun violence. This law specifically prohibits the possession, sale, and transfer of a wide range of semi-automatic rifles, including the widely debated AR-15. The ban also covers certain pistols and shotguns, aiming to limit access to firearms that lawmakers consider especially lethal in mass shootings. Unsurprisingly, gun rights advocates quickly challenged the law, arguing that it infringes on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. The case made its way to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, where judges ultimately upheld the ban. The court reasoned that these types of weapons are not only exceptionally dangerous, but also not necessary for self-defense in most situations. Refusing to accept defeat, gun rights groups have now petitioned the Supreme Court, urging the justices to overturn the lower court's decision. They argue that the ban sets a dangerous precedent and could open the door to even broader restrictions on firearms nationwide. Meanwhile, in Maryland, the Firearms Safety Act was passed in response to similar concerns. This law bans not only certain semi-automatic rifles, but also high-capacity magazines, which are often associated with mass casualty events. The legislation was designed to make it harder for individuals to obtain weapons capable of inflicting large-scale harm. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed Maryland's law and also upheld the ban. The judges compared the banned firearms to military-style M16s, describing them as dangerous and unusual weapons that fall outside the core protections of the Second Amendment. This decision reinforced the idea that states have the authority to regulate especially lethal firearms. When gun rights groups appealed to the Supreme Court to review Maryland's law, the justices declined to take up the case. As a result, the ban remains in effect, leaving advocates on both sides frustrated and eager for a definitive national ruling. With both the Seventh and Fourth Circuits upholding similar bans, the legal landscape is now marked by tension and uncertainty. The fight over assault weapons is far from settled, and the stakes continue to rise as more states consider similar legislation. Now, all eyes are on the Cook County case, which has emerged as the leading contender for Supreme Court review. The outcome could have sweeping implications for gun laws across the nation. These cases highlight just how divided the courts and the country are on the issue of gun control. The legal arguments are complex, and the consequences of a Supreme Court decision could be profound, affecting millions of Americans. As the nation waits for the Supreme Court's next move, one thing is clear: whatever decision is made could set a powerful precedent, shaping the future of gun rights and regulations for generations to come. To see why these cases are happening now, we need to revisit 2022 and the Supreme Court's Bruen decision. Before Bruen, courts balanced public safety against gun rights. Bruen changed everything. Now, gun laws must fit the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Courts have to find a historical twin for any modern gun law, or it's likely unconstitutional. This is tough for modern rifles like the AR-15, which didn't exist in the 1700s. Judges now disagree wildly. Some say AR-15s are just rifles, others call them military-style weapons. The result? Legal chaos and a flood of lawsuits. Some courts uphold bans using the history test, others strike them down for lack of historical precedent. Bruin was meant to clarify the law, but it's made things more confusing than ever. Every assault weapon ban case now hinges on this history-based test. When the Supreme Court declined the Maryland case, a few justices gave us clues about their thinking. Justice Thomas, joined by Gorsuch, wrote a sharp dissent, arguing that banning the AR-15 violates the Second Amendment under Bruin. He said these rifles are in common use and can't be banned for law-abiding citizens. Justice Alito also wanted to take the case, but they needed a fourth vote. The silence from Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Barrett is telling. Perhaps they want to wait for a better case or more consensus. Kavanaugh wrote separately, signaling the court isn't done with this issue and will address it soon. The message the Supreme Court is watching, and a showdown is coming. Justice Kavanaugh's statement was a preview of what's next. He expects the court to take up the issue soon, possibly in the next term or two. He pointed to the Illinois and Cook County cases as likely candidates for review. Notably, the Cook County petition landed on the court's docket just months later. Kavanaugh may be waiting for the perfect case, one with clear legal arguments and no procedural mess. His statement puts him in the driver's seat. As a swing vote, his decision could determine the outcome. He signaled he's open to striking down bans but wants the right case at the right time. The question is no longer if, but when and how the Supreme Court will rule. With the Supreme Court punting for now, the country is stuck in legal limbo. Some states' bans remain in effect, while others have seen similar laws struck down. The next step, the court decides whether to hear the Cook County case, likely within months. If 4 justices agree, oral arguments could happen in 2026. If not, bans stay in place and uncertainty drags on. All eyes are on Kavanaugh and Barrett for that crucial fourth vote. If the court takes the case, it could issue a sweeping ruling striking down bans nationwide, or uphold them, or send the issue back to lower courts. The outcome could fundamentally shift the balance between gun rights and state regulation. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the country waits for the court's next move. It's easy to get lost in legal details, but this debate has real consequences for every American. The Supreme Court's decision will impact public safety, personal freedom, and the political landscape for decades. If bans fall, previously illegal rifles could return to store shelves, alarming many who fear more gun violence. For others, it's about protecting a core constitutional right and resisting government overreach. This legal battle is a proxy for a much deeper, emotional debate about guns in America. The court is being asked to settle a question the country can't agree on. Whatever the ruling, it will spark both celebration and outrage. The decision will define the rules for the next generation and shape the safety and freedom of every American.